I just had someone share with me that the safe empowerment system for anxiety is better than anything they've tried for anxiety and insomnia so far. Talk about great feedback. I'm so glad it's working. Thank you so much for writing. And you can grab the safe system yourself for half off right now over at quietbegins.com. Life presents the toughest challenges. Every day you are faced with decisions that test your ability to express who you really want to be in this world. We're told to keep saying affirmations and keep thinking positively, but what do you do when that stuff doesn't work? Welcome to the Overwhelmed Brain, where you'll learn to make decisions that are right for you so that you can create the life you want now. Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Paul Coliani and I am here to help you increase your emotional intelligence so that you can avoid dysfunction, handle toxic situations with grace and ease, and show up as your authentic self. Everything I talk about on this show is my personal opinion and is meant for informational and educational purposes only. Always consult a medical or psychological professional before making any changes that could affect your physical or mental health. All right, let's talk about sex. Let's talk about an email that arrived that asks about someone's sexual past and sexual history. I was actually quite the jerk in my past when it came to my partner's sexual history because I got so, I don't even know if the word's jealous. I just got upset that someone had sex with someone else. I think when we get into a relationship, especially when we're younger, we get into these relationships and we think, okay, sex is the magical thing that shows that this person is for me and I am for this person. I'm not talking about everyone, of course, here, but I'm just saying a lot of young people, being young myself once, get into relationships and sex is sort of the magic act that glues or binds the relationship, and it is a sacred thing between those two people. And I'm not saying it's not a sacred, special thing between two people. It's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that typically when we're younger and we haven't had as much sexual experience, maybe I should just speak for myself. Typically when I was younger and I didn't have much sexual experience at all, having to think about my girlfriend back then having sex with somebody else was just devastating. It was mind-numbingly awful. And this is in her past. I'm not talking about when you're together with someone and they go have sex with somebody else. That's betrayal. That's infidelity. That's cheating. That's another episode. I've done several on infidelity and cheating. But what I'm talking about is the sexual past of someone that you are with, or someone that you know, or someone that you are contemplating being with, and it bothers you. So when it came to someone's sexual history in my life, I just thought they were, I don't know, a bad person. And I'm going to be transparent here and just say that I thought some of the behaviors of my past partners were offensive to me. And when I went into relationships, I had such high standards anyway. Again, this is my past, not how I am today, but I had high standards. I was very judgmental, and I wanted my partners to be as close to perfect as they could be. So when I went into a relationship, if they had a sexual history that didn't match mine, that didn't meet my standards, or that I thought was a little too excessive, then I would be upset about it. And saying this now is, again, embarrassing. I don't even think this way anymore, because when you get older and you realize that sex is a perfectly normal part of an adult relationship, then you start to back off about how you think about your partner having sex in the past. And what's interesting about this episode is I'm not really going to talk about sex all too much. So everyone that has kids and is listening now, you're probably thinking, oh, this is probably not the episode for you. Yes, there's going to be adult subject matter in this episode. I'll try to keep it as clean as possible, but I do believe that there's a point where if your kids are listening to stuff like this with you, sex might come up. Sex might be a subject of conversation. But if you don't think they're ready for that type of conversation, then yeah, maybe this episode might not be for them. But what I'm saying is that I'm really not going to talk about sex all too much, only because the real issue, at least with the email I'm going to read, is being upset about someone's sexual history and sexual past. It's such a good subject because I know other people have suffered with this, and this person who wrote the email suffers with this as far as being upset or not knowing how to handle someone's sexual history or their past. And because of that, it's important to talk about. I mean, there are people that suffer with many things, and this is one of those things that I think I've talked about once or twice, but maybe not to this extent. But when it comes to someone you love, someone in your life, and they have a history that you disagree with, I think the most important thing to focus on is asking yourself, are they the same person today? Because if you focus on their history, it's going to seem as if their history is happening today because you're imagining it happening. When I was with my partners in the past, I would imagine them in the situation that they told me about, and I would get upset as if they were doing it to me today. I mean, they were having sexual intimacy with somebody else while we were in the relationship. But that was only my imagination. That was only me forming a picture of something that they did that caused me to feel upset or angry or jealous to the point that they didn't want to talk to me about their past anymore. They didn't feel safe sharing things with me because I would get upset. You did what with who and how many times and where? And you did that with somebody else too, and somebody else came in the picture? What? There are all kinds of images that you make in your head when you hear somebody's sexual history, or at least when they share an experience with you. And because of that, if you aren't secure in yourself, and if you don't feel comfortable about sex in general or sex in your own life, then that might be an issue for you. And if you're listening now and sex isn't an issue for you, yeah, maybe you won't get anything out of this episode. I don't know, or maybe you will. But I like to look at it as anything that happens in someone else's past. The question that has to come to mind is, are they doing it now? Are they the same person now? Now, that doesn't mean what they did in the past, if it was against your standards or against your values, that if they are that same person today, that they are necessarily a bad person. I'm not saying that at all. I'm asking you, if you are dealing with somebody else's past and you're not sure how to get around it or get through it or process it or whatever, then asking yourself, are they the same way today, helps you understand what you should really be thinking about. Because I'm pretty sure that most people have done something in the past that they probably either regret or wish they had done differently or just wish they hadn't done at all. And when you have done something in the past that you wish you hadn't, and somebody else finds out about it, do you want to be judged about it? And do you want to be put down or hurt by someone else by saying, wow, you're a really awful person for doing that? Even though it could have been years ago, it could have been decades ago that you did behavior that maybe you're not necessarily proud of today. If somebody comes along and says, wow, you did that 25 years ago, you're an awful person. You took advantage of people. You are sexist. You are whatever. If they are judging you for something you did way in the past, and you're not that same person today, then they have some healing to do. Because it's no longer about you. Because you're not the same person. They have some healing to do to get past whatever beliefs or fears or judgments that they have, because who you were isn't who you are. In this example, who you were isn't who you are. And the fact that you aren't the person that you don't want to be anymore shows how much you've grown and shows how you should be treated. So if somebody comes along with their insecurities and says, your past was awful. I can't believe you did those awful things. I don't know if I can handle it. Then remember, that's their problem. That's their healing. That's their insecurities. That's everything they need to take care of in them, because you're not showing up that way anymore. Now, on the flip side, let's just say that you were showing up that way now. Let's just say that you did things that you didn't regret, or that, I don't know, you were a partier and you're still a partier and you just like being the person you are and you enjoy it and you don't have any problems with it. And then you meet someone who's more conservative, not as maybe liberal or liberated as you, and they have a problem with the way you were then and the way you are today. The good news is it's still on them. It's still on them because they're the ones choosing to spend time with you, even though they could be experiencing violations of their boundaries and their values. Meaning we bring our own standards into the relationship sometimes, and if we judge others by those standards, that probably means we want them to change for us instead of us adapting to and accepting them. And that is a very important distinction. When you get into a relationship and you choose not to adapt to the person that you're with and accept who they are and their behavior, and you have a problem with their behavior, then you are the cause of difficulty and challenge in this relationship, not them. They could have some awful habit that you hate, yet you're in the relationship giving them grief about it and being upset about it and being judgmental about their behavior, but you're not choosing to be accepting and adapting. That is on you, again, not on them, because they're showing up as an individual as they are, doing what they've always done, and now they have someone come into their life that says, no, what you're doing is wrong, you need to change. But what you're saying is you need to change for me, because they've been this way before you met. So when you go into a relationship and you say things, maybe not in these words, you need to change, or you need to change for me, or what you're doing is wrong, you should be ashamed of yourself, that highlights how you are choosing not to focus on yourself and what you need to do for you, and instead wanting to control them. And this is where we have to be really careful, because this was me all my life. I wanted to control the people I was with. If they did things I didn't like, I didn't say, hey, I didn't like that, so if you do that again, I can't be around you. I never said that, and that's the empowering thing to say. Instead, I was more subtle. I wanted to guilt them and be emotionally abusive toward them. I gave them the silent treatment. I made sure that they knew their own behavior that they didn't have a problem with, I did have a problem with. And when you let someone else know that their behavior is a problem for you, definitely not accepting, definitely not adapting, and most likely you are the problem. I hate to say that, because I know there are people listening now saying, but their behavior is terrible. Their behavior is awful. They are doing awful things and they shouldn't do those things. Or they're doing awful things to me. That's a different story too. That's an abusive relationship. But what I'm talking about is behavior that someone else does that you can't accept, you don't like, and you want to change that behavior, or you hope that their behavior will change. But when it doesn't, you become upset and you give them grief and you say things or you do things that are slightly manipulative or overtly manipulative and controlling, and you become the problem in the relationship. Again, this is really thin ice, because I know there are people listening now that's saying, yeah, but their behavior is just reprehensible, or I just can't stand it. It's nasty, it's dirty, it's awful. They're lying, they're cheating, they're stealing, whatever it is. They're thinking that the other person should change their behavior. I won't disagree. I think some people do need to change their behavior. I think some people absolutely have behavior that is probably reprehensible, that is certainly against my values and my relationship boundaries, and I don't want them to do it. But Am I supposed to be the one that changes them, or are they supposed to get into a space where they believe they need to change instead of me trying to convince them? Or in other words, is it up to me to help them change, or is it up to them to either realize the behavior is not productive or helpful and it's actually harmful and change on their own? Or should they look at me and say, well, I really want to keep this person in my life, so I'll change this behavior for them. But if I'm not with them, I'm going to go back to that old behavior. Because that's what happens, is that when somebody changes for us, and only for us, they don't really want to change, but they change for us. If we weren't in their life, they would go back to that behavior, which means it's still in them, and they maybe, very likely, will develop a resentment because they had to change for you or for us. And when they develop a resentment, that comes out in different ways. Maybe they'll say they resent you for that, or maybe they won't, and they'll just be unhappy, or at least not as happy as they could be, or it'll come out in other small, destructive, passive-aggressive ways that will make you wonder why they're so upset when you don't think you did anything wrong. You can't figure out where it's coming from, so you just wonder what is wrong with them. And it could have been some behavior that changed long ago that they didn't want to change but had to because they wanted to keep you in their life. I mean, I say had to, but they didn't really have to. They chose to so that they could keep the person in their life. But they didn't really want to change. And any one of us could go through this. You may change a behavior about yourself that you really don't want to change because somebody else has a problem with it. But would you do that behavior again if that person wasn't in your life? Now, I think if it doesn't affect you negatively, that it's okay to change behaviors. For example, if you really like fishing and you're dating a vegetarian, and the vegetarian says, that's so mean to the fish, why are you doing that to the fish? And they give you grief about it all the time. And you say, well, I really don't need to fish. I could just go to the lake and read a book. And if you came up with that decision and you decided to do that, and you are just as happy or just as fulfilled reading a book, then perhaps that behavior change wasn't a big deal. You don't develop a resentment, and you still feel good. You're still balancing your life in other ways. I think that can work because relationships are about sometimes small compromises and making changes to make a balance in the relationship so that you can get along better and connect easier and open your heart more. And sometimes, yeah, we make concessions for others so that we can strengthen the bond. And I think that can work sometimes. What doesn't work is when you change a behavior or somebody else changes a behavior and they start to resent you because they had to change it. That's when the relationship starts to go downhill, but usually from the inside out, meaning it starts to disintegrate from the inside and hollow out all the good stuff about the relationship, and it comes out in some of those passive-aggressive ways. And if you don't connect the dots, you'll never figure out why they're being this way, when what's happening is they probably resent you for something that they had to change about themselves that they didn't want to change. Now, let's address the person that's doing reprehensible behavior. The person that's doing behavior that you just can't accept, you just won't accept, you can't stand being around them when they do this behavior, or you can't stand thinking about them doing this behavior, and every time you hear about it or think about it, you just boil inside. When that happens, what you do from that point on will make or break the relationship and will make or break your heart or their heart. And what I mean by that is if somebody does a behavior that you don't like, I think, it's okay to talk to them about it, meaning you say, hey, look, when you do that behavior, it's weird. It makes me look at you differently. It makes me look down on you. I feel like you're better than that. Let's just say that you had that kind of conversation, which is mostly an adult conversation. I feel like you're better than that. It's still judgy. It's still placing your standards on someone else. It's still showing them that you have a problem with their behavior, but you're trying to handle it like an adult. So you say something like that. Hey, when you do that, it makes you look immature, and I really thought that you were more mature than this. So you have that conversation, and they say, yeah, but this is what I like to do, and it makes me laugh, or I enjoy doing it, and I've done this all my life, and Maybe that's what they say. Your next step shouldn't be to tell them to stop doing it. You could ask them, hey, would you mind not doing that around me? That could be another adult thing to say. Would you mind not doing that around me? It bothers me. And if they said, oh, yeah, no problem, then maybe the relationship can go on without that ever being a problem. Unless you develop a resentment because they won't stop doing it. That's another story, because if you actually tell them not to do it around you, but you know they're doing it elsewhere and you resent that, again, it starts to disintegrate the relationship from the inside out. But let's just say that they agreed, okay, I won't do it around you, and you're okay with that, and then fine. That could be a great way to get along. I know people that do this. But if they disagree and say, no, I don't really want to do this by myself. This is who I am, this is what I do, and this is the way I'll be. Your next step, in my opinion, shouldn't be telling them to change, shouldn't be making them feel bad or guilty for doing their behavior. I don't think you should be bringing it up all the time, saying that you still don't like it. I don't think that you should be moping around them or giving them the silent treatment because they won't stop. So you hope that they see that you feel bad about it. So if you feel bad, maybe they'll feel bad and they'll stop the behavior. I don't think any of that should happen, because at that point, when somebody says, this is what I like to do, this is who I am, this is something I don't want to change, and this is the way I want to be, at that point, it's no longer about them, it's about you. It's about you being able to adapt or accept or reject. In fact, this comes back to the 4 choices I've talked about in other episodes. You can either accept their behavior and then stick around, reject their behavior and then stick around, accept their behavior and then leave, or reject their behavior and then leave. 3 out of those 4 are okay. 1 is not okay. When you reject someone's behavior and you stick around and you stay. If you reject someone's behavior, you don't like it, you give them grief about it, you show them that you're visibly upset about it, and they feel it, they know that you're upset when they do that behavior, then what you're doing is rejecting their behavior, yet you're sticking around. And when you do that, you are the main problem in the relationship. The reason is because you are choosing not to honor yourself in the relationship. You're choosing not to abide by your own values. You're choosing to expose yourself to a possible toxic situation, and then you're blaming them for you doing that to yourself. And that's really the key to all this, is that when we're with someone that does behavior that bothers us, and they won't change, even though we've had an adult conversation about it, it's not that we have to blame them and make them feel bad. It's about checking in with ourselves and asking ourselves, is this something I want to continue to allow in my life? Is this within my personal boundaries? Is this within my relationship boundaries? Is this within my own personal values? Because if it isn't, then me choosing to be here and continuing to expose myself to that behavior is on me. This is about me and it's on me. They could be doing something awful, which is why it's so important to focus on yourself and ask yourself, is this something I'm willing to continue to allow in my life? Because there's one thing you have to accept when someone's doing something awful. And I believe this is the best way to make decisions, is to accept that that person will never, ever change. Just accept that that person and their behavior will never, ever change. Because when you do that, the decisions are a lot easier. I'm not saying it's easy to follow through on some of these decisions. I mean, if you have to leave a situation like that, it may not be easy to leave. You may be really tied up and committed, but I believe you do have to look at it in a way that they'll never, ever change. So if you've had the adult conversation and you've said it bothers you and they don't want to change, then you bring the focus back on yourself. You look inward, you check in, you figure out if you're going to be able to handle this or not. If you choose to accept it and say, you know what, it's something that bothers me, but I'm going to just accept that's who they are, and I'm just going to be okay with it. You may get to that point. There are people that get to that point. I've gotten to that point with certain people in my life where I've chosen to accept that's who they are. They'll never change. And because they'll never change, it's up to me to make the decision of what I want to do with my life and if I want them in it. And if I choose to have them in it, if I choose not to leave the relationship, I am not allowed to give them any grief. I'm not allowed to make them feel bad about the behavior that I don't like. I am not allowed to say anything about it. In this instance, I have chosen to accept them as they are because I know that they will never, ever change. And I think some parents that are listening now probably understand what I'm saying because they have a kid that does behaviors that they don't agree with, they don't accept, but you want to have your kid in your life, so instead of blocking them from your life or always yelling at them or telling them how rotten they are, you just decide, well, at least I have them in my life. At least we have some sort of connection. At least they're still my kid. I wish they wouldn't do that behavior, but they're still my kid and I love them, and that's just the way it's going to be. That is getting closer and closer to unconditional love. When you can look at someone and say, I don't agree with your behavior, I don't like your behavior, but I love you and I accept you and I care about you. And if that's what you think you need to do, then I'm not going to stop you. I'm not going to make you feel bad about it. I may tell you what'll happen if you do that, but that's your life and your decisions because eventually kids grow up and they become adults, and people listening now, they're mostly adults. Some kids are listening too, but when you are in an adult relationship, I believe it's important to remember that the other person is an adult as well, and they're going to make decisions that they believe are good or right or fun or fulfilling for them, and we can choose to accept those decisions or not. We can choose to adapt to those decisions and behaviors or not. But we shouldn't be focused on them changing. We should be focused on what's right for us and what we want to expose ourselves to and what we're willing to adapt to or not and what we're willing to accept or not. Because I'm not saying that you have to adapt. I'm not saying that you have to accept behavior. Again, some behavior you can't accept. Some behavior is way outside your values and way overstepping your boundaries, and you don't want anything to do with it. And when you don't want anything to do with it, remember, they're never, ever going to change, which means you have to, which means you have to make the choice. You have to make the decision to do the next thing that's right for you. When we come back, I'm going to read you that email. We'll talk about sex a little bit, and then we'll wrap it up. Be back in a moment. I'm here to talk about HelloFresh. I want you to skip some trips to the grocery store and make home cooking easy. It should be easy. It should be fun. It should be affordable. HelloFresh is America's #1 meal kit. My girlfriend and I have been using them, a couple of years now. I got to tell you, I am so thrilled every time we get a new box. We don't even look at what's coming. We just let the meals come, and we're surprised every time. I mean, they'll give you very fast, easy to prepare, easy to cook, 10 to 20 minute meals. They're very low prep recipes, and we've been getting dinners, but they also have quick breakfasts and lunches, and it's just perfect for a busy schedule. And there's a reason HelloFresh is America's #1 meal kit, not only because of the delicious meals they offer, but everything is just perfect when you get it and when you prepare it and cook it. We've never had missing ingredients. They always have the right amounts. Everything just works out. And my girlfriend always looks forward. She always yells at me across the room and says, "Hey, HelloFresh is here. You get to cook tonight." She gets happy when I cook it, but she actually loves cooking together. So we make it a sort of a family night between the two of us. But she also knows that when I'm cooking, at least it'll come out better than I normally cook without HelloFresh. So it's very helpful to have all the ingredients, the directions, and everything measured out just enough of what I need, and certainly ingredients that I can't really find sometimes in the grocery store. So it's nice to get these ingredients just delivered to us. And If you've been listening a while, you've probably heard me talk about Green Chef as well. These aren't competitors. Actually, Green Chef is now owned by HelloFresh with a wider array of meal plans to choose from. There's something for everyone between HelloFresh and Green Chef. I love switching between the brands myself, and now listeners of this show can enjoy both brands at a discount, because if you heard me talk about HelloFresh before, they were giving away 10 free meals, but they've raised the bar. They are giving away 12 free meals now, and I want you to take advantage of it. I want you to get this amazing deal. Go to HelloFresh.com/12brain. That's the numbers 1, 2, and the word brain. HelloFresh.com/12brain. And when you're checking out, use the code 12brain again, and you'll get 12 meals and free shipping. I mean, 90% of their ingredients are sourced directly from farmers to ensure the freshest produce and proteins are delivered right to your door. They're the first carbon neutral meal kit, and even the packaging they use is made almost entirely from recyclable or already recycled content. I know you're going to enjoy this as much as I have. Definitely take advantage of this offer. Go to HelloFresh.com/12brain. Use the code 12brain for 12 free meals, including free shipping. Welcome back. Like I said, I'm going to read you this email. It's about someone else's sexual history. This person actually wrote and said it's not about her boyfriend's sexual history, but her boyfriend has a problem with her sexual history. So let's see where we can go with this. She writes, "My boyfriend has a problem with my sexual history, and he keeps bringing it up. At first, I lied to him, and I felt bad, then I came clean. But now he no longer trusts me. I don't lie to him anymore, but I have a problem sharing everything about my past with him." So she wrote a little bit more there, and I just want to stop it there and basically answer this question right away. I've been waiting to say this. As soon as I saw this email, I've been waiting to say this on the air. My question to you is, why the heck does anyone need to know any of the specifics of your past? That's my only question. Why does anyone need to know the specifics of your past? Well, I guess if you're into genealogy, that might be different, or you want to find out someone's medical history and it worries you because you don't want to have kids with them. I guess that could be a good reason, but for the most part, nobody needs to know the specifics of your past. I can't imagine sharing specific encounters, especially of a sexual nature, with my girlfriend. I mean, I have. We have shared stories about our sexual history, but we are at a point where we realize that other relationships means that we've had sex with other people. That's just how it is. That's how it goes. When you're in an adult relationship, you've most likely had a sexual experience or two or 1,000. It's a fact. It's going to happen. In fact, when you were younger or even now, you may have experimented. You may have tried other things. You may have done things that other people wouldn't have done because you were exploring, because you wanted to push the limits, because you wanted to feel the adrenaline rush, or because you felt lustful and you just wanted to go for it. But nobody needs to know the details. That's your body, your past, and you were that person back then. And if you aren't that person today, then your sexual history is history. It's the old you. So that's my question to this person. Why does anyone need to know about all the specifics of your past? Why do they need to know about your sexual history? What is it about your sexual history that's going to affect them today? Why did they choose you today? Did they choose you because they thought you had a cleaner, whatever, not promiscuous sexual history, not experimental sexual history? Did they just assume all this stuff? Because if they made those assumptions, then they should have probably asked those things before they got into the relationship. But that shouldn't even play a part. Someone else's sexual history, again, unless you're a medical doctor or there's some specific reason you need to know, someone else's sexual history is history. It's over. It's not there anymore. Unless it is. If this person who wrote to me says, I am this same person. The way I was then is the way I still want to be today, but I've decided to just be with one person and do certain sexual things with this one person and not explore those other things. But it's still in me, and I would still do it today if I was single. That would still be okay. I mean, assuming it wasn't illegal. Assuming it wasn't illegal or hurting someone else, then it's okay to be who you are. But it goes back to what I said in the previous segment. The person that you're with can either accept that's who you are today and adapt to that and be okay with it, or reject who you are today and not adapt to it. But if they reject it, you aren't the problem anymore. They are. When someone doesn't accept you for who you are today, they are the problem. I mean, let me rephrase that. If they choose to stay and they keep putting you down for the way you are, they are the problem then. But if they say, I don't like the way you are, I don't want it in my life, and every time I think about you being that way, it bothers me. So instead of exposing you to my upset about your behavior or your past behavior, I'm going to leave because you don't deserve that. That's really the adult thing to do right there. You don't deserve my upset toward your behavior because I know that you're never going to change. So instead of me staying and always being hurtful towards you because you're violating my values or my boundaries, I'm going to leave you alone. That's if that person is the same way today. Now, if they aren't the same way today, by staying, then the question comes down to, why do you need to know the specifics of their past? That person may say, well, it's against my religious beliefs. I believe that you shouldn't have sex until you're married. Okay, if that's against your religious beliefs, guess what? That comes back to you. It doesn't go back on them because they made decisions in their life that they either regret or they don't, but it happened. I always say, own it. Own what you've done. This is what I've done in my life, and if you can't handle my past, you probably shouldn't be in this relationship. This is another tough love episode. I'm trying to be respectful to everyone that's listening, at the same time be a little tough on the people that may not understand this. And the reason I'm being tough is because I've ruined so many relationships by not being accepting and continuing to cause the other person to feel bad for their behavior, trying to make them change or trying to make them feel guilty for what they did in the past. That used to be me, and it's so embarrassing. It's so immature when I was that way. This is why it usually happens when you're younger, in your late teens, 20s, and sometimes 30s. Maybe later, I don't know. But when I was starting to hit my 30s, I was getting more and more comfortable that everyone has a very unique and different past than I have. And that was one of the most wonderful things about meeting other people, is that we didn't have the same past. But when we also carry around our standards and place them on other people, and we become very judgmental, and we evaluate them, and we try to control them, then the relationships start to fail. Because we look at our own relationship and the person in it, and we think that person could show up better, and if that person did show up better, then I would be happier and we would be happier. But that is illogical. It's flawed thinking, because what ends up happening is that one person who is as they are will now feel pressure to change into something they aren't, only to make the other person happy. And that's all that happens. It only makes the other person happy, but it makes the first person miserable. It makes them feel like they can't be themselves. And so when somebody feels like they can't be themselves, they start to close up. They start to put the emotional armor on. They start to feel unsafe with the person they're with. Because if they can't feel completely themselves with the person they're with, sordid history and all, the relationship starts to disintegrate from the inside out. So my question to the person who wrote the email is, why does anyone need to know about all the specifics of your past? And I want to thank you for sharing this. I know it's a challenging situation because you're dealing with somebody who I used to be. But why does your past need to be talked about? I never ask my girlfriend about her past, especially when it comes to sex, because I really don't want to know the specifics. I really don't want to see the imagery in my mind. And like I said, we've talked about our past a lot. We've talked about our past sexual experiences, but it comes up and then it goes and then we move on. And I just look at her and am grateful that she is with me. She chooses to be with me. And I think she feels the same way. I choose to be with her. I'm not liaisoning with any of my exes. I'm not communicating with them in an inappropriate way. There's no sexual tension between me and my exes. So there's a lot of trust that is inside of our relationship. And that is another big part of this, is that when you don't have enough trust because of insecurities or because of maybe past trauma, either in this relationship or other relationships where they have been proven to lie, like this person wrote, we're going to address that in a moment, then what can happen is that the other person becomes really super conscious of everything that's going on, and they're at a heightened state of awareness, and they think that there might be something else going on, so they get a little paranoid, which it sounds like this person might be dealing with as well. Again, we'll address that in a moment. But I think it's important to not ask about things that you don't want to really know about, because if you know about them and you have these pictures in your head, you could be creating your own stress. You could be creating your own trauma. I mean, imagine if you didn't know that your partner did something that was so sexually wild that you wouldn't be able to handle it. Maybe it's best that you just didn't ask. I mean, that's kind of a cop-out. You're just like, okay, don't ask. If you don't want to know, don't ask. But if they do ask, my belief is that you ask them how much detail they want. I think it's important to maybe establish those boundaries. If you're in a relationship where somebody is a little on the teeter-totter about wanting to know and not wanting to know, then you might want to ask them, well, how much detail do you want? Because I'm happy to tell you everything, but I don't want to paint any pictures in your mind of me doing things with other people and you being uncomfortable with it. But don't be ashamed or embarrassed by your normal or even crazy sexual encounters of your past, again, unless it's illegal or hurting someone, that you'll probably have some healing on or some, accountability on. If there's something going on there that you need to work on, that's a different story. I'm talking about someone's normal sexual history, which may seem abnormal or out of character for the person they're with. If there's a lot of wild experimentation, if there's stuff that they did that you'd never think they'd do, what they did in the past is their history and not yours. It is what they did at the time. Who they were at the time is not who they are now. I mean, we're different every day that we move forward. We're a little bit different in some way because of what happened the day before. So when things have happened in our past, months, years, decades ago, focusing on those things and thinking that that person is the exact same person that's in our space today is unfairly judging them for who they were and not who they are. And that's why I ask, is that person the same person today? If you are focused on who they were, then you're focused on the wrong thing. And this person who wrote, he's focused on the wrong thing. Is that the person you are today? I mean, you told me that you lied to him at first. You probably are embarrassed by something that you did in your past, or I don't know what it was. You didn't share it with me. But let's just say that it wasn't illegal and it didn't hurt someone. If it did, write me back and then we'll talk about that too. But let's just say it wasn't either of those things. And you just did something wild and crazy, or maybe you did it a number of times. It's still in the past, and I think you should own it. I think you should be okay with it. I think you need to be secure in your own past, and even if you regret doing it, I still think you should own it and say, yeah, that's what I did, and I wish I didn't, but it happened. It happened, and that's what happened. That's where I was at the time. Those were the decisions I was making at the time, and maybe I regret them, maybe I don't, but it happened. So nothing I can do about it now. And then the person who wrote the email, ask your boyfriend, what do you want to know? I'm willing to tell you anything. And this is the scary part. But before you say anything, you have to say, but if I tell you anything, I'm going to give you every detail. But I'm going to do it owning what I did and being okay with who I am. And I expect you to be okay with who I am today and see me for who I am today. Because that person doesn't exist anymore. That person isn't me. I am me today. This is why we're together. This is why you chose me and I chose you. Because if I was that person back then, I probably wouldn't choose you because you would have had a problem with who I was. And I would probably have a problem with you because you wouldn't accept that kind of behavior. So we weren't compatible back then. But I've changed over the years. I've made different decisions. I've learned what I like and what I don't like. And this is who I am today. So I need you to look at me for who I am today. And if you can't see me and accept me for who I am today, then you have to deal with it in some way. You have to figure it out. This is passing the baton back. You have to deal with this because I can't change my past. And I've decided that I'm going to own my past. I've decided that my past is a part of me, whether I like it or not, and it's just the way it is. So I'm not going to apologize for something that I did back then when I didn't even know you. My past is not about you. My past is about me. So let me deal with it in my way. And accept me and support me for who I am today. Not for the decisions I made back then. Quite frankly, that's none of your business. What I do today is your business. But what I did back then, you weren't even around. I didn't even know you. And even if you did, were you dating? Was it affecting him? You can see where I'm going with this. I'm allowing you to have the past that you had and not allowing you to feel guilty for that past because someone else has a problem with it. You don't need to feel guilty because someone you care about is judging you for your past when they weren't even around. So that's how I feel about that. Now, let's talk about the lie. You said, I lied to him at first, and I feel bad about that, and ever since then he hasn't trusted me. So I'd like you to listen to the episode I did on infidelity, because cheating is one of those things where a major betrayal takes place. And some people see a lie as a major betrayal. I mean, I see it as a major betrayal. If my girlfriend lied to me, I'd be like, what? Why did you lie to me? There was really no reason to lie. But if she said, I was so embarrassed, I really didn't want to tell you, but she finally came clean, I'd tell her, you don't have to lie to me about that, ever. You don't have to lie about anything to me. If you don't want to tell me, that's okay. I mean, you have to deal with it in your own way, but you don't have to lie to me, and I don't want you to lie to me. I want you to be honest. But in the context of what you're referring to, like you lied to him about your sexual history or something like that, you probably did so because you probably didn't feel safe enough to share it with him. Maybe you knew that he would be upset by it, and maybe that's why you lied. And, that says a lot. If you know that he's going to be upset about something regarding your sexual history, then that already shows that he may be a little bit sensitive to this subject matter. And because of that, you felt the need to lie. Now, I'm not justifying your lie. I'm not saying that it was a good thing to do. You were better off saying, well, if you want to know the details, I'll tell you, but you probably won't be able to handle it because I know how you handle these things. You might say something like that. It's a little bit of a dig, but you might say something like that, and then you can have the conversation. But let's address the lie now. So you did lie, and now he has this insecurity about your lies, or he just has this feeling that you're going to lie again, or whatever it is. My take on lies or betrayal in a relationship is that there's 3 steps. 1, apologize and mean it, but only do it once. So you apologize and you mean it, and you only do it once, because if you apologize and you mean it, you don't have to do it again. One heartfelt apology that is true and sincere is all you need. If you apologize again, if he brings it up and you say, yeah, I know, I'm so sorry, I keep telling you how sorry I am, I'm so sorry, then I see that as you didn't mean the first one. I know you did, but it's best to treat an apology as a one-time thing, and you have to mean it. So step 1 is apologize and mean it, and only do it once. Step 2 is to express remorse and make a promise. So here's where you plant the seed that trust needs to rebuild again. Step 2 is, that'll never happen again. I feel really bad about doing that. This is the remorseful part. I wish I hadn't done that, and I feel bad every time I think about that. And then you make the promise. I promise you that'll never happen again. I will never lie to you again. I may say that I don't want to talk about it, and I hope that you give me some freedom to say that, but I promise you that won't happen again because I feel really bad and it was wrong. I shouldn't have done it. So step 1, apologize, mean it, do it once. Step 2, express remorse and promise never to do it again, and mean that too. I mean, if you're going to promise this, you got to mean it. And then step 3 is a response to when they bring it up again, because that's probably going to happen. He's probably going to bring this up again. Step 3 is to redirect it back to them. What that means is he brings it up. Well, you should feel bad about what you did. I can't believe you did that. He tries to bring it up. He tries to make you feel guilty. Your step 3 is to own it and redirect. You own it saying, yeah, that's what I did. I can't change the past. That is what happened. That's what I did. Then you redirect. I'm sorry if you have a problem with it, but that's your problem. That's not my problem anymore. I'm dealing with it in the way I need to deal with it because it happened to me, not you. So what I did is my challenge or my issue, or maybe it's not a challenge at all for you if you don't have any regrets or anything like that. But number 3 is you own it and then you redirect it back. This is what happened to me. And now if you have a problem with it, you have to deal with it. And at that same time, you could say, look, I understand if you still don't trust me. I understand if you still have a worry or an insecurity about being able to trust me. But I'm telling you right now that I will never lie again. So it really does come back to you choosing to trust me or not. You can choose to trust me so that we can start strengthening the bond again and getting closer and mending some of the damage that I did because of my lie. But there's a point where you're going to have to choose to trust me or not. And I hope you do trust me because I'm being honest. But if you don't trust me, then you need to make a decision that's right for you. If you don't trust me, if you think that I'm going to lie to you again and you can't get it out of your mind, then I want you to do what's right for you. I want you to make the decisions that you need to make so that you're more comfortable. And if you feel like I'm going to lie to you again or you just can't trust me, then it's important for you to make the right decision for you because I'm out of it now. This isn't my issue anymore because I'm okay with my past. I've learned to deal with it. I've learned to heal from it, and I've learned to move forward. And now it's on you. So I will be happy to talk to you about this, but there's nothing more I can do for you. I can't change who I was, and I can't change your mind. I just need you to be okay with who I am today, or make the decision that I'm not okay. And if you can't accept the person I am today, then you might have another decision to make. You're not feeding them the answer. You're not telling them what to do. You're just saying, this is what you need to do. You need to figure out what to do because I've done everything I can. If you've ever lied to someone, if you've ever felt bad about your history like this person has, or anything like that, and you are not that same person anymore, you're not going to lie anymore, and you know that if they could read your mind, that they would see that that would not be anything that you'd ever do again, then you don't have to spend the rest of your time trying to convince them. You just have to tell yourself, this is who I am and I own it, and be comfortable in your own skin and be proud of who you are, and then convey that to the person that you're with. Because if they see the insecurity in you and the worry and the constant apologizing, then you're on the wrong side of the coin. You are not empowered. You are in a very powerless place. And as long as you stay there, they'll keep you there. This is one of those things where you say, they'll never ever change. So I guess I have to change. I'm not going to apologize anymore. I want my power back. I want to feel good about myself. Okay, so I did some things in my past that I regret. I wish it hadn't happened. But those were my things, not his things. That was my past, not his past. What I need to do for me is be okay with my past and tell this other person, I'm okay with it. If you're not okay with it, you have to deal with it. But you can do that in a loving way. I hope this helps. There's a lot to cover in this episode, and I kind of went in a few directions, but I was able to keep it pretty clean regarding the sex issue, but we all know what we're talking about. We all know what it means when I say experimentation and inviting other people in. I mean, I don't have to spell it out. I don't have to be detailed. You don't have to have all those images in your mind, unless you want them. That's a different story, but either way, I'm glad you tuned in today. And when we come back, I'll say my thank yous and my goodbyes and my final words right after this. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Overwhelmed Brain. I want to thank our sponsor, HelloFresh. Go to hellofresh.com/12brain and get 12 free meals with free shipping. Do it while they're still offering it. Use the code 12brain for 12 free meals, including free shipping. And I'd like to thank the financial backers of this show. These are the patrons of The Overwhelmed Brain. They either give monthly or yearly, and I am so grateful they are on this list. And this is a long list. We have one of these every now and then. I'm going to go through this list really fast. Monica, Victoria, Kathleen, Tracy, Lisa, Crystal, Andrea, Matt, Christy, and Henry, and Leela, and Larita, and Kelly. Thank you so much, patrons. I am so grateful for your support. And I want to thank a few other people here. Fwong or Foon, you're a new patron, and I am so grateful for you. Thank you for your support. If I'm mispronouncing it, let me know. I don't even know which way I pronounce it. Foon? I'm not sure. But let me know how to pronounce that. I want to say your name right. Thank you. And Matt, you're a new. Matt, so glad to have you on board. Thank you for supporting the show. And who else? Walter. Thank you for joining, Walter. All of these are either new patrons or someone who is donating every month. I mean, you can be a patron or you can be a donator. There's a choice, and some people choose to donate instead of become a patron. Now, what is a patron? Patron is when you go to moretob.com, like More the Overwhelmed Brain, moretob.com, and you can support the show by joining the patron program, which gives you access to the patron membership site, which allows you to look at all the workbooks I have in there and the videos and the episodes I've never aired publicly. Those are all in the patron program over at moretob.com. So if you find value in this show and you want to give back, head over to moretob.com. And thank you, existing and new patrons and those who donate. I am so grateful for you. And it keeps the show going. Financial support is the backbone of what we do over here. And, of course, it's run with love. It's run with love and respect for you. I've been doing this, what are we on? I'm going on 8 years now. We started in 2013. And it just wouldn't be possible without financial support and the backers that give every month. So thank you so much. And I want to mention the Love and Abuse podcast. I have another podcast called Love and Abuse. It's about emotional abuse and manipulation and control and about poisonous communication and toxic relationships. Some of the stuff that we talk about here, like today I talked about exposing yourself to a toxic situation and being judgmental and emotional abuse. And all of these little quirky behaviors can be very damaging to a relationship. And when you portray any of these behaviors, or they are a pattern of behaviors in any relationship that you're in, you might be experiencing emotional abuse. So it's important to understand what behaviors are toxic and what behaviors are just normal challenges that we all experience and not necessarily emotionally abusive behaviors. So if you're interested in that, head over to loveandabuse.com, check out the podcast, and I'm sure you'll get a lot from that. And finally, I'd like to thank Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com for some of the music transitions in The Overwhelmed Brain. And to conclude the show, I'm just going to read you a couple of the notes I took. I sometimes write notes for the stuff I'm going to talk about, and then when I start talking, I never refer to the notes. So I'm going to read through these and make sure that I covered what I wanted to cover today, because I've got some stuff here that I don't think I talked about. I did talk about that. I did ask, here's a question I wrote down. Why do you have shame about your past? This is the person in the last segment. She wrote and said, my boyfriend has a problem with my sexual history, and I feel bad, and I don't know what to do. Well, one of the questions that came to my mind is, why do you have shame about your past? Now, maybe she doesn't, but that's a good question. Do you have shame about your past? And I followed it up with something I already said. Did you do something illegal, or was it just experimental partying, extra people during intimacy, etc.? But the question is regarding sex often being treated as taboo. Like, so many people have so many insecurities around the subject, and they project those insecurities onto us, or we project it onto them, like I used to do. I used to have so many insecurities about sex, and one of the main reasons, if you want to know, this might be too much information for some people, but one of the main reasons is when I was younger, I didn't have as much as I wanted. I was very self-conscious about my body. I was very insecure in myself. I watched porn at a very young age. I mean, way too young. just like kids today are seeing stuff way too young online. And that gave me a lot of body image issues. So because I didn't meet the standards of what I saw in a pornography at 10 years old, and I only saw like 5 seconds of it, but when I saw it, I knew that I had to look like that or I wouldn't be attractive. So that really messed with my mind. So I took these insecurities into my relationships, and I remember being so insecure in every relationship until I grew comfortable with the person I was with. But that certainly played a part in how I showed up in my relationships. But that's too much information. You don't need to know that about me. I'm just sharing that because my insecurities played a huge part in my relationships and how I treated my partners and how their sex life was a problem for me. I mean, their past sex life was a problem for me because I was so insecure and I didn't do half the stuff that they did, and I felt like that they should have done less, and it was just an awful thing to put my partners through because they weren't that person anymore. They are the person I see in front of me now that I can either choose to enjoy and be present with or choose to focus in their rearview mirror and see nothing but their past, which wastes so much time. How much time do we waste looking at the past, thinking about how it should have been different or how it could have been different? It's just such a waste of time because it's gone. It's over. It's like thinking, I wish those asteroids never landed on Earth. Otherwise, the dinosaurs would still be here. Why? It's just a waste of time. It happened millions and millions of years ago. It's a waste of time. There's nothing you can do about it. The past in the past, 60 million years ago, is the same as yesterday. There's nothing you can do about it. It happened. It's gone. It's over. I'm not saying that if you did something yesterday that you shouldn't be accountable for it, like if you did something that hurt someone. I'm saying that once it's done, it's done. So you can either move on from that and make the most of the present and the future, or stay focused in that rearview mirror. And we all know the answer to that. So let me go through the rest of this, see if I had anything else. Why do you have shame? Okay, you don't have to answer these questions. I know people who have dated porn stars. So yes, I've known people who have dated porn stars, exotic dancers, and they had issues with their partner's history at first, but then they realized it was no big deal because the person they love today is not the person they were. I mean, it's the same stuff. I'm repeating myself, but this is what I wrote down. In other words, who are you today? Even if you are the same person as back then but have toned down, I believe you should own it and be okay with who you love and what you do. Again, unless it's illegal, and that's a different conversation. So I said a lot of this already. Let me just go through the rest. If you're going to feel shame, if you're going to feel shame, make sure it's justified. If you're going to feel regret, make sure it's something you should actually regret. Shame and regret have to be reserved for the biggest things in life. If you played around, if you were promiscuous, if you had a lot of partners, men, women, whatever, it's natural. There's nothing to worry about there. And if you're still that way, there's still nothing to worry about, except maybe STDs. But you have to be okay with a partner that is okay with you being the way you are today. Most of the people that I meet that had a wild or crazy sex life in their past aren't that same person anymore. They were young, they were trying to figure things out, they were living life the way they knew how. Maybe some were rebellious, all kinds of reasons really, but almost all of them settled and found their path. Oh yeah, so I wrote that. Almost all of the people that have had a past, a different sexual history, have settled into a new normal, a new space, and found their path. And not only did they own their past behavior, but they also didn't allow other people's insecurities make them feel bad about it. So I wrote that too. Not only did they own their past behavior, but they also didn't allow other people's insecurities make them feel bad about it. And I'm not saying just don't feel bad. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that make sure that if you feel bad about something you did in your past, that you have a very good reason to feel bad. Because so much of the sex stuff that we think is taboo or forbidden or terrible is really normal. Sexual urges and sexuality in general is just a normal part of being an animal. So don't feel shame or regret unless it's absolutely justified. And only you can decide if that's true, because sometimes we run into our own standards and our own judgments, and we have to work on that and heal from that. But don't let that run your life. Your past is your past. It's time to be present. It's time to be thinking about the future and going forward, because the more energy you put into your past, the more energy leaches away from your present and your future. And all you can do right now is what you believe to be right for you going forward. And just one more thing for the person who wrote that email. It's not your job to make him feel safe. Remember what I said. I'm sorry that you have trouble with my past, but that's what happened, and there's nothing I can do about it today. I'm not that person anymore, and if you can't be with me as I am today, then you need to decide what's right for you. And if he can't make that decision, let me remind him and anyone that needs to hear this, always keep an open mind. This is what helps you step into your power and create the life you want. Always take steps to grow and evolve. You are powerful beyond measure. And above all, and this is something I absolutely know to be true about you, you are amazing.